Black excellence is knowing your history. You have to know where you came from in order to know where you're going. It is increasingly more important as people of color to have an understanding about our heritage. We have a rich history here in America, and a lot of times you don't get to hear about it. I encourage each and every one of you to go and talk to your elders, talk to anyone in your family about, it could be as small or as large as the topic is, but make sure you have a clear understanding of the contributions that your family has made to this world.
Welcome to the Dripping in Black podcast, where we celebrate Black excellence throughout the Black diaspora. Here's your host, David V. Lewis.
What's up, good people all across the world? This is the Dripping in Black podcast. I am your host, David V. Lewis. And per usual, we have another fantastic guest. Today's guest is Michelle Campbell. Michelle, say hello to the world.
Hello, world.
And I think this is going to be a first for us as well. We have somebody who's dynamic in a variety of ways. I don't think we have enough time to really capture all of it. I know we don't, but we're going to try to do our best to get her story told. Such an excellent story to tell. I've been looking you up. I didn't tell you that part in the pre-show, but I've been looking you up. It's a lot to look up as well. So we're going to get right into it. We're going to start with our traditional question of, we always like to ask, who is our guest? So who is Michelle Campbell?
All right. Well, thank you, David, for having me on the show. And I'm just excited to be able to share my story, and hopefully it helps inspire, encourage someone. So who am I? I am an African-American woman. Actually, I'm multicultural, and you'll find out a little bit about that later. But primarily, when you ask me, who am I? African-American woman. I'm a mother. I'm a sister, a daughter, friend to very many people, corporate executive, community activist. I like to have fun, and I love and enjoy my life, spending time basically living out my purpose.
Yeah, okay. That's a good place to wrap that question up, and then a good place to start as well, because we got a question about the time that me and Sean kind of chopped it up about it, but I'm gonna ask that a little later. We're curious about the time you're able to the way you're able to divide your time, but I'll pose that a little bit later. I want to start off with your background. Where are you from?
Born and raised Detroit, Michigan.
Okay.
Went to private schools, started out in Lutheran schools, then transitioned into Catholic schools. So I went to Greenfield Peace Lutheran School on the west side. Then I went to St. Scholastica for a couple of years, graduated from there. The natural progression from there was to go to Benedictine. So I graduated from Benedictine High School, and then went straight off to Michigan State University. And from there is where I really branched out and started moving about the world, you can say. So graduated, went straight to Chicago, lived in Chicago for 20 years, moved to Boston, lived there for a little while, and now I'm in Rochester, New York.
Wow. Yeah. So I want to ask a question about the Lutherans, the switch from Lutheran to Catholic or Catholic schools.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a big deal?
Yes, in a little bit. And the reason it was a big deal for me is because not only was it from an academic perspective different, it was also a personal transition for me. My parents had recently gotten divorced. And so the decision was made, we're going to, try this new school out, without ever really thinking how impactful that is. So I went from kindergarten to sixth grade in one school,
Mm-hmm.
same friends. I mean, very
Mm-hmm.
close knit cheerleading team,
Mm-hmm.
track star, all these
Mm-hmm.
things that just, okay, seventh grade, brand new, didn't know a person
Wow.
in there.
Yeah.
Uniforms. I mean,
Wow.
went from being able to wear your regular clothes to wearing uniforms, walking in a single file line from classroom to classroom, having to, well, we went to church in Lutheran school, but going to mass, and actually there's a ritual and practices,
Yeah.
rosaries,
Yeah.
all of that stuff was like brand new. And
Yeah.
by the way, on a personal level, we were going to Lutheran church. So my church was
Yeah.
on the southwest side of Detroit,
Mm-hmm.
Messiah Lutheran. And so we still practice being like a Lutheran. But then when I went
Wow.
to school, I had to put on my Catholic hat and then be a
Mm-hmm.
Catholic, so
Yeah.
well, not be one, but really learn the practices of Catholicism. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
it was definitely different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
That
you know,
question stems from my, I'm a history teacher, and I'm not gonna delve too far into it, but I was just curious because that the Lutheran Church was really born out of protests
mhm.
of Catholicism. So to have that dynamic in your history sparked an interest in me. But okay, so let's talk about Michigan State. You had a great time at Michigan State. What degrees did you earn from there?
Yeah, so uh, right after, high school, went right on to college, Michigan State, stayed in Brody Complex. For folks that are watching this, they know where that is.
Mhm.
Emmons Hall. Actually, I was in one other hall, Bailey, before Emmons, but Emmons was way cooler. So we had to figure out a way to get out of Bailey and into Emmons. I always knew what I wanted to do, which is probably rare for most
Mhm.
people. By the age of
Yeah.
13, I knew I wanted to be an engineer. So I
Mhm.
have my Bachelor of Science from Michigan State in electrical engineering. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. And it was just a matter of not really understanding what that meant, but just knowing I was determined to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are some cousins in your family that were into engineering as well, but they didn't go into electrical, or they went into something different, and you
That's right.
chose electrical for a reason. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I had you did read up on me. Okay, so yeah, I had at the time I had a cousin at State who was in mechanical engineering. I had two
Mhm.
cousins at Wayne State. There was actually a cousin and his fiance who subsequently got married. They were chemical engineering. So as I looked through
Wow.
the catalog of types of engineers, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do that one. I'm not going to do that one. Okay, I'm going to do electrical. It seems pretty interesting. I was known for like taking vacuum cleaners apart, fixing radios and stuff like that. Product of
Mhm.
being, in a single household, and you ain't gonna get a new radio, so you better go try to figure out how to fix it. So, by
Mhm.
default, being kind of electrically inclined, and then deciding
Mhm.
that, this is probably a good fit for me, which, in hindsight, I'm so glad that I picked it, not knowing a lot about it. It is probably still the one of the most I would say sought after types of
Mhm.
degrees. You can transcend from that to computer science, computer engineering,
Mhm.
and all of that. So it really was a good choice after all for me.
Yeah. So you're at Michigan State, and I know, having been through college myself, as a Black person, the higher up you go in your classes, the fewer of us we see across
Yeah,
the room.
that's right.
So talk to us about that experience for you as you
Okay.
start matriculating through your major. What is that like from a race standpoint?
Okay. So growing up again in Detroit, most of my classmates looked like me. Even in a private school setting. I mean, we had a few
Mm,
people that were Caucasian, but for the most part, it was Black, West Side Detroit,
mm,
so forth. So small classrooms too, coming from a private school. My
mm,
graduating class was like
yeah,
160 some students or something. So
yeah.
sitting in a classroom, like a calculus class with hundreds of people,
Mm,
and
mhm.
my number, I still know it to this day, I was a number. Okay, I was not Michelle. Like my teachers used to know me. I was, well known, very active, and so forth. I was just a number at
Mhm,
Michigan State. You're one of
mm,
many. And oh, by the
mm,
way, you probably ain't gonna make it. you're probably not going to
Mm.
even make it. We had this one class, engineering 290 at Michigan State, which was headed up by Dr. Tompkins, who was an African-American professor there. And that class was geared toward African-American or minority students who wanted to go into engineering. Now, I'll never forget something he said to us in there. He said, look to your left, look to your right.
Yeah.
He said, one or both of y'all are not going to make it through. And I know who was here sitting on my right. I'm still friends with them. And there was a young lady on this side. I said, it ain't going to be me. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. And sure enough, at the end of the day, they didn't make it, but I did. And, you know, it was just that determination, but it was real. And it was like, really? I'm going to something and not make it? I went to school knowing that I had good grades and everything. So whatever I put my mind to, I was going to do. So I couldn't even imagine not doing it, you know, especially wanting to do better, wanting to be on my own. You know, it's a whole nother story of independence. And I looked up how much an electrical engineer made. I said, oh yeah, I think I can get with this, you know. In fact, when I graduated from Michigan State, electrical engineering was the #1 technical degree. And I went to go work for the #1 company in that technology. It was an engineering magazine. And so I was really proud of the fact that I was able to land a job, probably one of the highest paid coming out for that year because of the company I went to.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's go into that. So let's go into your post college career. You got your degree in engineering, and you've done some dynamic things in terms of innovation, right? So tell the audience about that start that you had with the innovative things that you've done.
Okay, so I started with the #1 telecommunications company in the world at that time. I think everybody know who that was back in the late 80s, early 90s, of who that was and what pagers they had and cell phones and everything. We were killing the game, as they say. I mean, we were making money hand over fist, and everybody wanted our product. There was no such thing really as a Samsung, iPhone, Nokia, and all these other people. They weren't really even in existence. So we dominated. And it was fun. It was a fun time. I mean, actually, let me back up for a second, because actually when I started in the two-way radio business with this company. This company was about 180,000 employees at the time. So it was massive. We had 7 different divisions. The division I was in was what we called our land mobile product sector. And so that was basically two-way radio. So all your police, fire, EMT, and so forth, they used their radios. And I was fortunate enough to be on the cusp of a transition. And this transition was from radio to cellular, but still encapsulating cellular. So if you remember the Nextel push-to-talk phones, the chirp phones, as people say, that was my baby. That's where I was. I was there when that thing transitioned from just people using it for fleet, like taxis and trucking and so forth, to actually you and me, your grandmother and so forth, being able to use that two-way radio / cell phone technology. And oh my God, those are the glory days, okay? Because again, there was no one else in the industry that did that. I was like in what I call the first of that. Stayed in that for a number of years, kind of made my bones, had a lot of growing pains, learning pains, and so forth, but then moved into true cellular technology, what we call CDMA. Then I moved into a brand new technology that nobody really was feeling or believing, was called long-term evolution, LTE. And you know, people was like, what's this? You know, this is talking over broadband, voice over IP. You know, what is all this? You know, everybody was so used to the radio and the radio systems and the network and, you know, having cellular communications. This was all broadband. So it was like a whole new world. And I was fortunate enough to be on the front end of all of that, seeing when, T-Mobile sent out their RFP, which is the request for proposal. So they were bidding out like their deals, like AT&T wants to build a nationwide network. Verizon wants to build a nationwide network. Who are we going to go with? And you have to complete an RFP. And we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of pages and responses and rebuttals and oral presentations to their headquarters. And I was involved with all of that. Okay. So I became a guru of it, after a while, but that was definitely I would say another one of those interesting times in my life. And it's while we were building out technology, I was building up my career, becoming an executive, becoming in leadership position, being appointed into a we called it the Next Generation Leadership Program, which I didn't even know existed, by the way. It was kind of like this little secret society, in so many words, that if they felt like you were good enough to maybe move into executive leadership, they would tap you on the shoulder and you would get a separate program. You have to do your day-to-day job, but you got to also be a part of this program, which was pretty intense. And the audience was all executive leadership in the company, and they evaluated whether or not you were worthy or not to move up.
Yeah, a lot there. So I want to go back for the audience sake. So you have broadband. Explain that to somebody who's not technical of what broadband is and how that was different than what you were doing previous.
Okay, so the original, I guess you can call cellular technology is more just like it says, cellular. So it's cellularly constructed. You have towers where you're transmitting and receiving radio signals. Similar in approach, but this is all over the air with broadband, whereas you're not dealing with like circuit switched. You're dealing more with broadband. I mean, it's kind of, I don't know how to simplify it enough, but it's all over the air. It's all broadband. This is your bits and bytes, right? As opposed
to what's over the air? When you say over the air, what does that mean?
Let me see. Simple way, because I get real technical and people like, you lost me. I would just say voice over IP, internet protocol. So as opposed to voice over circuit switch, so over IP packets is the way you now will communicate, and how we actually all do. Most of us are on 4G, 5G. When we talk on the cell phone, we're not talking circuit switched anymore like we used to do with true 3G. If you remember the term 3G technology, GSM and all of that, right? And CDMA, that's all like legacy. This is all IP packets. This is all what we call over the air. And same kind of concept with, you have towers, you work in a certain band, frequency band. So most of like our carriers that we have today work and operate around certain megahertz, a certain giga, it depends on where your bands are. So I don't want to get too techie, but every carrier has a set of bands that they operate in. And so like you ever get a phone and they say, okay, this one is provisioned for Verizon use only, as an example. Can't go and take that and work it on AT&T because they operate in an entirely different frequency band. And so the radios and the antennas that are built into the device itself, as well as the network radio, have a compatibility, right? That they work with each other. So you can't just interchange and switch them. And oh, by the way, it costs millions and billions and billions of dollars to obtain bands. So, it's big companies like that have big pockets that can afford to own blocks of frequency spectrum, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think I followed you pretty well. So,
good.
So at the core of what I want to ask, because I'm always marveled at this, you're at the forefront of this idea, this innovation. Where does that come from? How do you figure out to move it from the cellular, and I know this is the electronic, electrical engineering aspect, but it's an innovative part of it as well that really piques my interest, right?
Yes.
What are those conversations like, going from
Yeah.
taking this thing from cellular to broadband?
Right. So it's not like just a group of folks like at one company kind of coming up with this. There is industry standards.
Mm,
And particularly 3GPP is a standards body. It's an international standards body, which
mm,
various companies that are in this space agree on what should the protocols be, um,
mm,
what band should be operated in, what type of operations, what are the, if you ever looked at a flow diagram of how packets come in and out, how that works, so it's not
mm,
like anybody out here, like, I'm gonna just go and make me a broadband system. No, it has to follow a
mm,
standard. So
mm,
as these standards evolve, they have different releases, like I think 7, 3GPP R7, R8, 9, so forth, are kind of like those broadband ones. There's an agreement across the industry on how that is to work. So when it's time, everybody knew we need more capacity, we need faster, right? So how do we do that? Well, we know internet protocol is much faster than circuit switch. So it's just these folks getting together and agreeing on how that is going to be ushered forward. And they're
mm.
released at a certain time too. So it's not like anyone is leapfrogging anyone else. The standard comes out, you build toward the standard.
Yeah. And you just happen to be in that circle of people figuring this thing out.
A little bit, yes. I also had worked with very, very smart people who
Hmm.
actually held positions in standards. So each company has, depending on how big your company is and how much you can afford, you can have so many representatives from your company that sits on these boards with the decision makers, essentially. And so, yeah, by me default working with these folks that spend a lot of time in standards, I was just a recipient of the information and then being able to disseminate that out to my team on how we would build out our solutions.
I just got Sean in my head. I know he's hearing you being so humble with it. But I'm looking at all this information. I'm saying there's some collar popper that need to be going on. So let's go a little further, because
Okay.
you're not just an electrical engineer, right? But you have influence following generations to try to get into that. Let's talk about the mentorship that you're doing.
Okay. Excellent.
Mhm.
So even in my career, one of the things I did, I purposely and deliberately reached back to my alma mater, Michigan State University, and I recruited interns to work in engineering fields within the company. And I did that because, and I actually went to our equal opportunity office because I remember being that student struggling, trying to figure out what am I gonna do this summer, where am I work, who's hiring, and so forth. It's always nice when that phone call comes into that office and they say, "Hey, we got 3 positions here at company A. Who you got for me?" You know, and so they equipped me with some really talented people and really exposed them to what I do and really helping just mentor them on, is this what you want to do? Because understanding the theoretical part of engineering is very different than the application and
Mhm.
actually when you're dealing with the outside world. So for me, the theoretical part was boring. I ain't gonna even lie. It was boring because I'm not a lab rat. And I'm not disrespecting anybody who works in a lab because we need you, but I am not that person. I am very interpersonal. So I would use that as a vehicle to show them you can actually interface with these companies, some of the largest telecom providers in the world, some of the largest wireless carriers in the world, some of the largest, equipment suppliers in the world, and sit down in forums and make decisions across the table with them. And so I showed them what I considered the fun aspect of being an engineer, because it's not just sitting in the lab, it's not just writing code. Sometimes, it's about making critical decisions, and it's nice to be able to have the technical background, but also understanding the practicality and the application of it, and how are people going to use this, and what do the buttons need to look like on a device? Should the antenna be over here or over there? Do they want that to be red when it pops up? All that kind of stuff, right? That's engineering too. I tell people all the time, I said, whether it's a box of cereal, whether it's a toothbrush, a car, a space shuttle, it's all engineering. Everything in life has an engineer has touched it in some way, shape, or form. And so me being an extrapersonal person, I just looked at an opportunity. Well, let me go grab this person. Let me go show this person this. Let me go expose them to this, because they don't teach you that. And when you're, got the books and you're studying and you're doing problems and stuff, you don't learn about what I just told you about, right?
Yeah. It's so important. And again, I'm an educator. It's so important for the book knowledge, and the book knowledge is where it starts, right? What I mean by that is, to get into the field, you have to have a certain certification, right? So you have to have the book knowledge, and getting students, let's say high school age students, to understand how it's applicable in the real world is such a huge thing to expose a young mind to, right?
Yeah.
So I want you to tell me the story. I read a little bit. I don't want to tell it. I want you to tell it for us, of how you had a group of people that didn't think they wanted to do engineering. Right. Tell us that story.
Okay. Yeah. So I was working in Chicago. As you know, that's a large metropolitan area, large African-American community on the south side and the west side. There was an organization where I was actually a board member, volunteer first, became board member, called Jobs for You. And one of the things that we did, in addition to many things to help prepare children for working in professional environments and so forth, is to expose them to what engineering looks like. So I said, let me go grab up some of the kids from the South Side, because I know when I grew up in Detroit, nobody grabbed me up and said, come here and, look and walk through this plant with me at Ford or GM or whatever and see how things go. So, our headquarters being right there in the Chicago area, got a bus, brought the kids out. And the first question I asked them, I said, so who wants to be an engineer? And they're looking around like, I don't even know what that is. What do they do? I said, okay, so I'm just hold that question, hold that thought, because by the end of the day, I want you to get exposed to what engineers do. I'm going to bring in different engineers. So I brought other people that look like me, men and women, who talked about their journey, talked about what they did, some of the cell phones that they could relate to. They're like, oh, yeah, you was on that, And then we had, smart homes where you have smart refrigerators and all this cool stuff that they got to see in our innovation center. And they fell in love. And they didn't realize like all the little things that they take for granted every day of what is behind the scenes to get that done. And then so after exposing them to all these wonderful things, from Hollywood to your home to the corporate environment to, out on the beach somewhere. We had everything. We had our hands in everything. I said, so now what? Who wants to be an engineer? And all the hands raised up, like, oh, yeah, I want to be an engineer. And sometimes it's just that exposure. Whether or not they pursued it is one thing. But if you even touch one individual, one youth that, explain to them like, hey, this is a possibility. And oh, guess what? It's people that look like you that are doing this stuff, and they're like thinking, sometimes you think stuff is like so far away and so out of your reach. Yeah. It really isn't.
Yeah.
Things aren't as complicated as we envision them to be. It seems like it's more I could never do it. I could never build a car. I can, but there's people every day in, manufacturing, building vehicles. And, even if someone heard their story about that, or, I made this, I had a friend that used to work at a food industry, and he was an engineer. And I was like, even pizzas? Yeah, even pizza, frozen pizzas that, are in your grocer's freezer. There's an engineer behind that. And it's just fascinating and exciting and very tangible is what I want to say for, young individuals that might be listening. It is extremely tangible. If you want to do it, just I know it seems oversimplified and cliche, put your mind to it, but really put your mind to it, because my mind was fixated on, I'm going to get out of this school, I'm going to get this degree, and I'm going to work, and I'm going to make me some good money. Watch. That was honestly, that was my mentality at the time.
Yeah. So part of the dream with this podcast that Sean and I created a few years ago was exposing our people to the variety of jobs that are out there, and people are actually filling those positions, and letting them know that it is potential, it's possible for them to do those things, because a lot of times we don't have the image of it. So I just think it's just so important that they were able to experience that for you. Now, I got to pick up the pace a little bit because there's so much left. All right. And I want to get to this time question. So I'm going to do it this way. So your primary position, correct me if I'm wrong, is if I'm wrong, is with Robert Bosch, right?
That's right.
Talk about your responsibilities for that industry.
Okay, so the first thing people hear Bosch, they think of power tools, washer and dryers, dishwashers, automotive. Even, there's a big headquarters, North America headquarters here in North America, actually in Farmington Hills. So a lot of people hear that, they think of all of those things, but I'm actually none of those things. I'm actually, I'm in the video solutions division. So basically, you think of all the security cameras in your retail stores, your airports, your hospitals, anywhere you look up and you see, a dome camera, you might see that name Bosch on it. And my responsibility is I'm in charge of all the cloud video management services that we do for North America. And it's funny because they say, oh, you're going to be, regional manager. You're going to be, I said, oh, okay. So I'm thinking like Northeast, New York. And they're like, no, your region is North America. So you got all, you got all the United States. I was like, that ain't no region. That's a whole continent. But yeah, I was like, all right, okay, how hard can this be?
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, you think about you just walk around any place, you be surprised, you'll look up and that's probably us. And so cloud technology is relatively new. If you think about even in your movies that you watch on any movie, and they talking about a video recording, and where are they going? They run to the back to go get some player with some tape or something, right? Those are antiquated ways of doing things. What we're talking about now is in the cloud. So envision you sitting in your living room, tapping into a cloud database and being able to access that video real time, being able to replay that video, be able to do forensic searching on that video, meaning I'm looking for a man with a red shirt between these hours in this location, and and all that comes up, right? That's the forensic technology that's all being done now in the cloud. And so, people are still buying on-premise equipment because that's tried and true and so forth. But you'll see there's a shift occurring there. There's many people. So I'm very busy, by the way, with people wanting to transition from on-premise equipment to the cloud. It's secure, it's reliable, it's redundant. So there's no thing like, oh, it's a fire and the tape burnt up, or somebody came in the back and stole the tape.
Yeah.
That's not, there is no tape anymore.
Yeah.
So just bringing video solutions and technology to the 21st century is what I do.
Wow. I mean, I'm fascinated by that, because I am a spy, espionage movie. I watch all the FBI's, and they got all this video stuff, and it's like you said, a lot of times it's going to this place to get the video, but what you're telling me is that technology has moved beyond that point, especially probably for those organizations where they can tap into that information a lot quicker. Wow, that's mind blowing, but I'm not going to get caught up on my thing, because I could stay there.
Oh yeah, trust me, it is quite interesting, and being able to then tie into law enforcement will be key, right? Because now the police doesn't have to come and go to the liquor store and see, go give me the tape and run it back to 2 o'clock in the morning. And no, none of that. It's all tapped in. So when an alert it's here, boom, now the camera feed is now tapped over to them. Now they can see what's going on. Just imagine the best situational awareness you can ever have. I know some people are scared about that, because that means Big Brother's watching and
yeah. That was where I was going.
Yeah, but one thing is, if you ain't doing nothing wrong, then it should be okay, because you think about your home. You want your home to be secure. You want, when you step out and go to the store, you want to make sure that there's somebody that's got eyes on you, or that the minute something happens. I mean, we got technology where if a slip and fall occurs in the store, it'll send an alert. You don't have to wait and somebody come up and say, I failed in aisle 7, no, we already know it, because it came up on the system that it was the analytics in the cameras and also in the cloud are so sophisticated. And by the way, we do it the best. I mean, and that's a shameless plug, but honestly, we do. I mean, we get what you pay for, as they say, right? We are, on the more premium side of things, but you're going to get premium quality. We solve tons of crimes with our solutions, and I think people realize that, and it's worth it. When it comes to a point where the cost benefit of putting the investment in to get the return on what you get as a result. I mean,
So my question is, who are your biggest naysayers, especially when we think about this is America and how protective America is of their privacy rights? Who are your biggest naysayers?
Naysayers. Well, I would just say there's apprehension still in the federal space, just because that is ultra secure. Although our products, we do supply them to some federal entities, that's still a market that is still maybe a later adopting market. Banking is another one that is kind of, there's a lot of rules and requirements you got to meet in order to satisfy some of those things. So I wouldn't say they're per se against it. They're just really ironclad on what you can and what you cannot do. As a whole, I think the idea of facial recognition is still debatable, and that's state by state. Each state has their own arrangement on what is prohibited and restricted and so forth. And so until there's confidence, I think, in the reliability of the application, I think there'll be a bigger adoption. It's just with anything, right? When it's kind of new, it seems like, it's not 100%. They thought you was Joe Smith and you're David Smith, and then, all of that mess. Once those kinks get ironed out, I think this is just a natural progression. It's just like going from circuit switch to broadband, in my opinion. It just takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So that's Bosch. That's one thing that you got on your plate. Let's talk about Smack Productions.
Okay.
What is that?
So Smack Productions, founded a few years ago, meaning souls making a change, is kind of this organization. It really started out as a kitchen conversation with some cousins. And we were saying, what can we do in the light of what happened with George Floyd and all the turmoil and things, and how our people were at an unrest and people wanted to talk out and lash out. And so my very first show was really about the police and community relations and bringing them together. That was my absolute first show. And because I have a very good relationship with many leaders in law enforcement across the world, and particularly United States, but across the world as well, I was able to get a few good men and women together to talk about that candidly. And it really just spawned from there. It was like, okay, it's not just the police community relations. We got to get our wills and trusts together. Oh, COVID hit. Now we got all these myths and conspiracies going out. I need to get some experts out here to talk about the truth about the vaccination, the truth about the virus itself. And so the good part about that is I brought people of color that are expertise in these areas to talk to our community. I can tell you one, for COVID, I have family members, friends who were like, I ain't taking that virus. They trying to kill us. They try, all these kind of things, right? And when I brought in these, I brought the top infectious disease doctor, who's an African-American woman. I brought ER doctor who spent a lot of time dealing with COVID patients coming into the ER, an anesthesiologist. I had all these top experts coming in, pharmaceutical company executives coming in and telling the truth. And they look like us. People call me up. I'm getting it. I'm going to go ahead and get the the vaccination, because it convinced them. Because otherwise, where are they getting the information from? Somebody on the, in the neighborhood.
Social media.
Social media is the worst. Talking about 5G is causing COVID. I said, oh my God, stuff like that. So I was like, let's just get the truth out there. And it's really was to educate, enlighten, inform, energize, mobilize our people to be that change we want to see. Because if somebody's not telling them like it is, bringing the awareness, getting them woke, who gonna do it? Really? That was kind of how it started. And, every month I sit here and I say, well, what am I going to talk about this month? I really never know. I don't have like a 12-month lineup, because the world is evolving and changing so much. You just never know. One minute there's a mass shooting. Next minute there's a virus. Next minute, our Social Security is being impacted. So what kind of things do our people need in order to be successful in this world? We can't keep doing the same things. We can't keep celebrating the same people. So what you're doing right here with Dripping with Black is exactly what is needed. Because how many of us, no offense or anything, but we all know about the Martin Luther King story, the Rosa Parks story, and so forth. There are so many more people than that, right? And sometimes it's just bringing the awareness. And I love doing that. So that's part of a little bit of what my purpose, when I talk about living a purpose-driven life, that is it right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that there. I got 1,000 questions with that, but I'm gonna leave that there because I want to keep going with this theme. So you also have where you gather Black Spartans together. I think in a couple of ways. I know you do the travel group, right?
Yes.
Talk about the things you do with Black Spartans and bringing them together.
Okay, so I call it the home of the Black Spartans. It's founded in probably about 13 years ago. Have 3,600 members. It really started off as when social media first came on the scene, and I got adopted to it. I said, I want to keep in touch with some of my friends from Michigan State. And so that's how I really started it. It is no affiliation with the Michigan State University Black Alumni Association whatsoever. I'm making that clear because they would want me to do that, because they have their own separate, organization and entity. But it is the largest African-American Black alumni network for Michigan State University. We do a variety of things in terms of sharing out information, I try my best to do that as you know, as time permits. You know, my schedule permits, and the information is given to me. A lot of people behind the scenes are so great and gracious. They'll send me things and say, "Oh, put this out there," and I'm like, "Yeah, I can put it out there. This is our page. This isn't
Mhm.
my page. It may look like
Mhm.
that because I'm putting a lot of content out there, but it's really for the people." And
Mhm.
since that time, we've done things like expanded beyond and started a travel group because we realized, okay, we're old enough, our kids are out, you know, on their own and stuff. We
Mhm.
might have a little bit bandwidth now to actually travel and enjoy. So
Mhm.
what I try to do once a football season, right now it's just for football, we
Mhm.
find an away game and we go and get together. My co-partner, Dana Lewis, she is in the hotel and restaurant management space, and
Oh,
she
future guest sounds like.
it's a match made in heaven. She can get all the connections with, you know, our group rates and everything that really helps get volume discounts for our group. We have, you know, welcome receptions, surely the game itself, and, you know, just a nice time to get together. And so, you know, this year we'll be looking at going to Minneapolis. We're going to rain down on Minneapolis, Town, and see what we can do there. So I'm excited about that, as well as looking forward to visiting the George Floyd Memorial with the group.
Absolutely.
So, you know, just having that opportunity to network, and we get a couple hundred people every go with this. So I anticipate it to expand and to grow as well. One other thing to add to that, so that's one school out of the Big Ten. I know you might have been trying to segue here next, is that we have a Big Ten Black alumni group, which was originally started by someone from U of I. And
Mhm.
he asked me, he said, I don't even know. I think one of our alumni from Michigan State gave my name, and I thank her. That was Courtney Hicks, Lanier. She gave my name to them, say, you know, who's a good person to engage with this, Michelle. And so the rest is history. So now we have 14 schools in that out of the Big Ten, and I'm representing
Wow.
Michigan State along with another person from Michigan State, Ken. And I would say in total, we probably have over 12,000 people in that group.
Wow.
You know, we did, you know, we've been trying to get something together for us. There was kind of an unofficial get together last summer. Yeah, it was just last summer in
Mhm.
Chicago with a group of people. But I really feel that us getting together as a collective, as a Big Ten group, as a Michigan State group, it's just important. I don't do this for any, I don't get paid for it. I don't have a
Yeah.
budget for it, you know, whereas alumni associations, they get budgets and,
Mhm.
you know, they have scholarships and all that. I do it because I love to do it. You know, this
Yeah.
is just me personally, and I think that comes out in the way that I present it, in the way that I show my passion and commitment to it. I
Yeah.
have, you know, big respect for all our alumni associations, but this is just my little thing that I started, and people don't want me to let it go. So I'm not gonna let it go. I'm just gonna keep doing it and keep letting it grow.
Yeah, as you should. Now, you are also the first African American to become a part of the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution. So tell us about that.
Okay, so NSDAR, National Society Daughters of the American Revolution,
Mhm.
is a non-political, bipartisan type of organization. It's just really an organization founded in the 1800s by a group of women who had an association or affiliation with a Revolutionary War patriot. And
Yeah.
so they got together and formulated this organization, which for over 100 something years have been limited to just white women.
Yeah.
And we all know that Blacks fought in the Revolutionary War. We also know that
Thanks.
we are biracial products of people who have fought in the Revolutionary War, me being one of them.
Absolutely.
Um, the organization at any given time has a roughly 180,000 active women, mainly in the United States. There are a few international as well. And out of that, 100 of them, a little over 100 are Black women. So that just tells you right there, it's very small in terms of the African American population. I have about 7 members in my family alone that are part of this organization. My grandmother, who is 102 years old right now, she's probably one of the oldest women in the organization, living women in the organization today. I can probably safely say that she is the oldest African American woman in the organization for sure. And she joined at age 99. I saw to that. I wanted to make sure. People say, well, why would you do that? Because of the whole Marian Anderson thing, and they wouldn't let her sing at Constitutional Hall. And I want to dispel that myth a little bit, because yes, that was an issue. Eleanor Roosevelt addressed that. And since that time, she actually sang a couple of times there. And that was not during my era, not discounting it, but I'm always about moving forward, always forward, and not holding back grudges of the past, because how are we ever going to have our foothold in society if we keep holding ourselves back? You know what they did to us back? Yes, they did some terrible things to us, but if we use that as a crutch on why we won't advance, then we will continue to be exactly where they would want us to be. And that is definitely not where I want to be, or I want my descendants to be.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that process. So you're not in this group. How do you become a member of that group? What's the steps to that?
So you have to show legal documented evidence that you have direct line of ancestry or descendant of a Revolutionary War patriot. My fifth great grandfather was a Revolutionary War patriot on my maternal side. And so I literally had to show birth certificates, death certificates, census reports, land grants, anything that shows proof that I am connected up the line to this individual. And I just recently realized that on my paternal side, my fifth great grandfather over there was also a Revolutionary War patriot. So I'm in the process of working on that second, we call it a supplemental application to get in. It took me about 2 years to get in the organization. And, part of the reason, there's 2 reasons why I did it. One is because I did have a conversation initially with a cousin who was in it, who encouraged me to do it. I talked with a woman who was the first African-American woman to join the DAR, Karen Batchelor. She is actually from the Detroit area, and she was a friend of my cousin. And so I had a chance to talk with her, and, her being the first and the challenges she had, and overcoming those. And it just inspired me, like, I got to go do this now. I got to make sure I do this. And, since that time, I brought other people into the organization. My 2 sons, when they were kids, I got them into the Children of the American Revolution. So at age 18, they can make the decision, or anytime after 18, that if they want to be part of the Sons of the American Revolution, that there's already proof and evidence and a paper trail that supports that. So I'm just trying to make this path a lot easier, because it took me 2 years, like I said, and it wasn't easy at all to, get that information. I had to go down to Macon, Georgia, and pull records from the archive. I mean, it was a lot. Because you just can't say, hey, I know my grandma told me, we were part of such and such. No, you got to prove it.
Yeah. So I'm curious, who were they? Who were the patriots?
So on my maternal side, the patriot, his name is Robert Hart. I should have brought the pins and everything, because we actually have a sash that we wear, and you have all these very decorated pins from Hamilton jeweler. So this ain't like some little cheap jewelry. These, real nice jewels that you have that represent your patriot, your chapter, and so forth. And also on my paternal side is Joseph Campbell, which is really a gem, because a lot of people, especially women, don't get a chance to carry their name, their namesake. Like Robert Hart is down the line somewhere, right, to get to me, Campbell. But on my paternal side is, from me, my dad, my grandfather, and so forth, Campbell, all the way up. And Robert Hart, that line came from England. This line came from Scotland. So as you know, Campbell is Scottish. I do have Scottish inheritance as well as English inheritance. I have an official Scottish family crest and lapel pin to represent the Campbell family. I'm in the official Campbell Society, which is, again, you have to prove that. And that's like through a whole different test. DNA is included in that, Y chromosome DNA. And I could go down that rabbit hole with you, but essentially, long and short of it, men carry Y chromosome. The Y chromosome in the man does not mutate, or very seldomly mutates every 1,000 years or so forth. So whatever your last name is, if that is the name of your father, grandfather, and go all the way up, anybody that has that last name as a male taking that test and they tie in with your last name, it will tell you your match. And so that is how we were able to confirm exact matches through DNA, Y chromosome specifically, testing that we are legitimate Campbells.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So this is the question I've been setting you up. There's 2 questions, and then we'll get to our closeout shortly thereafter. But we're only given 1440. This is something we say common. We're only given 1440 minutes in a day. How in the world are you doing all of these things with your 1440? That's my first question.
Yeah, I ask myself sometimes that, having a full-time job, being a mother, just all the social things I want to do, all the community things I want to do, I just make it happen. I also have a personal life. I have someone I'm dating, and, have to spend time with that, him as well, because, I got to give everybody their share of Michelle. And, I believe he gets his proper share as well as the rest of the world. But, I feel like now that I know my purpose, I guess I have a newfound energy. I can see how, have you ever had like something you love to do and you could be up all night, all day, hours upon hours doing it? Without that's what my life is now. I mean, my whole life is like that. Wow. And it wasn't always that way. And I think because I know purpose, I got work to do. I know I got stuff to do. I know I want to have fun. I know I got to raise children. I know I got a career and all this, but all of it is for purpose. I don't do stuff just to do. Everything is somewhat deliberate. And so when I know that it's all going to a purpose, a greater good, my purpose is to give back. My purpose is to show people their purpose too, and identify that we all are here for a reason. And once you know that, and I'm gonna tell you, I didn't always know that. So I was working and burning, like they say, burning the candle at both ends, because I was doing a whole bunch of stuff, but probably not driven to the purpose. Now that I'm there, it doesn't seem like work, It doesn't seem like, oh, I gotta go do this. It's like, I want to go do this. I want to show somebody something. I want to be a better person to this one. I want to give this person an inspiration. And sometimes I'm giving inspiration to people I don't even know I'm giving it to. They might hit me up and say, that message you posted or that conversation we had, that really touched me. that meant something to me. And then that's how I know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do here. So
and
it's not work.
it's probably countless others who never make that call that you're
Yeah.
impacting as well. When did you, so you're in a place where you're not at that place where you know you have a purpose, and then you get to that place. What's the moment that happens, or what's the evolution to that place?
Yeah. That's the most exciting part, because I grew up in a Christian household. My mom's a pastor. She wasn't always a pastor, but she is now. I mean, but it was very old. I told you we grew up Lutheran. I'm not Lutheran. I'm a Christian. I'm not Baptist, Presbyterian, and all that, right? Actually, my Lutheran church converted to non-denomination. Long story short, but the bottom line is, I heard this all my life. You got to live in purpose. You got to walk in purpose. You got to. What are you talking about? What does that mean? I ain't gonna even lie. I'm like, you'll hear the elders say, you got to know your purpose. You got to walk in purpose. What does that mean? And then one day I had to literally, I would say, I'm going to tell you what I did. Okay. I'm going to tell you exactly what I did. And y'all can take notes on this, because I told my cousin, and she took notes. Repeat that for me again, girl. So this is what I did. I said, I think I had a pretty good run in my life. I think I've made some really good decisions, but God, I need you to show me what you would have me to do. Because I can make I think I'm making some pretty good decisions. I'm a corporate exec. I done spoke to the United Nations. I've done all these fascinating things in my career, but is this what you want of me? And then I said, can you show me what it is I'm supposed to do? And literally I heard, well, your whole world is about to change. I like my world right now. So what we about to do? What's this? So what happened? I was married for 20 years, and that just overnight was done. And I was like, all right. I never regretted it. I never felt bad about it. I mean, honestly, I knew when God told me some things were going to change, unraveling had to happen. Some things had to unravel that I had put in place. And I had to unravel back to age 11 and 12, where my parents got divorced, and reconcile with that. Because I was of the mind, I don't need no man to do nothing. Okay, because my dad did everything, and he was all this and that, and it seemed like the whole world ended when they got divorced. For me as a kid, moving to a new school and all this. So I had to process that and realize a lot of things, right? And so when that happened, I was stripped down. Okay, when I say stripped down, my career had went sideways for a minute. My marriage went sideways for a minute. My past came lurking back at me, and I had to go reconcile it. And I said, wow, this is the unraveling that had to occur. But God said, but I'm about to rebuild you. I'm going to rebuild you into somebody that you would have never been able to rebuild on your own. And I'm going to tell you what, things started coming together. I got the best job, the best boss, the best coworkers, the best team under me. So corporate was a different thing. I didn't even go into all the corporate drama that I had gone through for 20 something years, but just know it was a lot. Okay. And I never wanted to see that again. And I told myself, if I go back into this, God says, it's not going to be the same though. And it's not. It's so much better. It's so much freer. My relationships are more, it's not about, oh, y'all look cute together, and oh, y'all make this kind of money, and y'all can have this big mansion and these cars and all that. That was all great. And I still like that kind of stuff, but that's not the marriage. That's not the relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Relationship, when you understand your purpose, that person understand purpose, y'all work in purpose together, It's a
Yeah.
whole different ball game. So a lot of things, I had to, like I said, get stripped down to get rebuilt
Yeah.
because
Wow.
I needed to be a better person. And I'll never forget one of my good brothers went to Michigan State, Darnell Blackburn. He told me, I said, Darnell,
Mm.
I'm good. I said, I am good. He was like, yeah,
Mm.
you are a good person, but God wants you to be better.
Mm.
I was like, I don't even know how I can be better. I mean, honestly, I'm like, I am the whole package, the whole package. Okay, I got this and that and that. It's not about that. It was up here too. And
Wow.
when that got transformed, I realized, okay, now I see what better looks like. Now I
Mm-hmm.
feel better. Now I can work like a workhorse. Everybody around me think I'm crazy. I'm well rested, right? I'm well rested. I
Wow.
have enough time to do what I need to do. It just worked out. But I had to
Mm-hmm.
let go. You hear the cliche, let go and let God and all that. I
Mm-hmm.
literally had to let go because I had a
Mm-hmm.
good plan, I thought, but
Mm-hmm.
it's nothing like the plan I got going now. This is a
Mm-hmm.
absolute best plan for me. And I
Yeah.
encourage everybody to understand that purpose. And sometimes we're doing stuff, we're making a lot of noise and ruckus and making stuff, doing stuff, but we're not following the purpose of why you even exist.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh man, that's awesome. I'm not going to even take it nowhere else. I had a few other things that I was going to ask, but I think that's just an awesome way to kind of cap that off. So we must get to our final question that we ask each and every one of our guests. It's an interesting question. Are you ready?
Sure.
Uh, have you ever been on the cover of a magazine?
Mm. No, not on the cover of a magazine.
Okay. All right. So there was pause there. You've been in
No,
magazines?
I've been in magazines,
Mm-hmm.
but I have never been on the cover of a magazine.
Yeah. And so, that's one of the joys of this thing that we're doing here at Dripping in Black. We've done this for so many people. Our guests, we place them on the first magazine cover. S Square
Ooh.
Sean Smith is going to give you the preview of yours. He's going to pull that up for you.
Ooh. Ooh. I like. Wow. That
All
looks
right. So
wonderful. Thank you.
that is a parting gift that we give out. We will print that out, laminate it, and send it out to you as a huge thank you for coming out to the Dripping in Black podcast.
Wow. You guys are awesome.
All
Thank you
right.
so
So
much.
you are, the pleasure is all ours. I want to give you an opportunity to drop any social media with regards to the Big Ten, Spartans, the Black alumni, as well as Smack Productions and all of that. So drop all your social media.
Okay. It's so let's start. Smack Productions is S period, M period, A period, C period Productions. That's on Facebook, and on Instagram is Smack Productions 2020 on Instagram. The Big Ten Black Alumni Group is just that. Make sure you pick the one that has like thousands and thousands of members, because some people want it to be imposters and break off, but you can't ever duplicate excellence. So 12,000 strong, might be more than that. It says, I'm trying to remember how the language is, but it's basically, if you look up Home of the Black Spartans, that is where you will find our Black graduates, alumni. This isn't a fan group, so it's strictly for people who have either attended. So we even allow, if you've attended or graduated from Michigan State, you can become a member of that. The Black Spartans Travel Group, also on Facebook. Again, attended or graduated from Michigan State. There are some membership questions that need to be answered in order to fulfill your membership approval. So let's see, I think did I get them all? I think
It sounds,
I did. Yeah.
sounds really good to me. Any shout outs you want to give?
Let's see here. Wow. Oh yeah, to all of my I call them my journey members, my journey friends, my tribe. You know who you are, who have helped me through that, really the transitional period of my life. And I would say that was within the last 5 years of my life where things really went on a different, more higher level, more positive trajectory. Shout out to, of course, my mother, who's out there. She'll probably watch this at some point in time. My mom is usually the last one to watch my podcast and things. You know how it is. But yeah, shout out to her for her rearing and upbringing and sometimes being tough, but I understand why now, why she did what she did and why she had to do what she thought was the best thing. And yeah, my babe, my boo, he knows who he is. For just being totally there for me and helping me actually continue to be a better person. And shout out to you and Sean for really, bringing me to this part of another piece of my journey and being able to share my story with the world.
Yeah, the pleasure again is all ours. I think I'll be remiss. We've had quite a week and a half in our area, right? Specifically dealing with Michigan State. So I want to give you an opportunity to speak to that. I graduated from U of M, Dearborn, but this is a time when we're all Spartan strong. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, hard to process. I think about just when I was at Michigan State and just going through the College of Engineering was a challenge in and of itself. Trying to find your identity is a journey in and of itself. I couldn't even imagine then having that whole thought of active shooters potentially, in harm's way on campus. Campus was a safe zone, and I'm not saying that it's not a safe campus. This literally could have happened anywhere. My youngest son is about to go off to college, and I asked him, I said, he's going to Northeastern, and I asked him, I said, are you scared? He said, no, I'm not scared. I mean, this is kind of their reality. They've been going through this for a while. The high schools, grade schools, the high schools, the colleges, it's their new normal. I never wanted to be that way. Prayers go out to the families, to Brian's family, Alexandria's and Ariel's family, to the ones that are still in the hospital, trying to recover, the faculty, the staff, the students that still remain, the alumni, the extended families of everyone affected by this. I mean, it just hit home. It was like it was in my throat, when I heard it, because I've been up there for homecoming. I, go to the alumni awards galas, and I'm very, very supportive of the university. So for that to happen, and then for me to be here in New York when that happened, I felt like detached, like I needed to jump on a plane and do something, like my kids were up there or something, or it was just a lot. So just prayers out to everyone affected. We will get through this. We are Spartan strong. That's what we stand for. That is our mantra, and we live by it. We will overcome. We will, and it'll make us an even stronger university, a stronger Big Ten. Overall, I love the outpour from the Big Ten, especially University of Michigan, who most days we like this, but when I saw them light up Chrysler Arena and how they recognized us so well on Saturday at the basketball game and other sports and other colleges too around the area. It does makes your heart warm that we are one, and we need to go and take some action on this. That's my next step on what do we do next? How do we fix this? How do we not let this happen again? Right. So I think as a collective, we got to mobilize. We got to do something about this. So That's
Yeah.
my parting words with that.
Yeah, that's very well said. And so we just want to give a huge thanks to Michelle Campbell for coming out, sharing bits and pieces of her story. I promise you, we could not chronicle it all here, but we did a yeoman's effort trying to do so. So big thanks to Michelle. We want to remind our audience that the DIBK Drip Shop is open. Go to dibkdripshop.com and cop your latest Dripping in Black merch. Lots of great stuff there to represent Black excellence. So go ahead and cop that. We are still in February, where there is a discount for those that go in there for Black History Month. And as always, a huge thanks to all of our listeners, viewers, supporters, and subscribers. And until next time, be kind, be loving, and be excellent on purpose. It is a choice.